really, you have to just be perpetually exploring your options. You have to be really tapping into your deep-rooted curiosity. Like, what have you always wanted to do? What have you said, one day I will do this? Because one day is today. Go do it. Go figure out how to do it, because you will be so amazed by how capable you are once you try. You will, yes, you will fall, you will fail, you will make mistakes when you learn something new. You are not going to be good at it right away. But let me tell you, from my own experience and from the research I've done and the people I have interviewed, you have no idea the possibilities available to you. But I promise you, it will be like, you will just be amazed by how much you can achieve if you just step a little bit outside of your comfort zone. You cast aside your narrative that's born of your self-doubt.
Hey, friends, and welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Aundrea Cline-Thomas. I'm here to help you live a life that you design instead of choosing a life you think you have to settle for. Guess what this week is? Our newsletter is coming back. Next Nuggets will be delivered to your email inbox on Wednesday. I had to take a 20-second timeout because my plate was entirely too full. I was trying to do too much and I didn't have the capacity, and I was feeling burnout coming. And so I hated having to do this. I hated having to pause, but I just did because I had to be honest with myself and I had to save myself, child. I had to put the mask over my face and figure it out for myself. And so I had to put the newsletter on pause, but it's coming back. It is coming back, and I can't wait to begin talking to you in this way yet again. So the Next Nuggets newsletter, if you're like, what's that? If you're new here, we got a newsletter where we talk about these episodes in more depth. We talk about takeaways, how to implement what we're learning from our guests. And they're just more resources and tools. It's just a great way to kind of stay in touch. So Next Nuggets newsletter coming back to your email inbox starting on Wednesday. Go to the show notes for a link to sign up if you have not already signed up. All right, today we are talking about the power of setbacks. And I was thinking about it. The word itself, setback, is not something that I use often, but once I was thinking about it, a setback is how I started this podcast. A setback is the reason why I blew up my whole life. A setback can be so incredibly painful, but it can also birth something so incredibly beautiful. Only though, if you let it. We're not just talking about career advice. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about life in this episode. Our guest today is Amy Shoenthal. She is here to show us exactly how to bounce back from setbacks, literally step by step. She is the author of a best-selling book. It is called The Setback Cycle: How Defining Moments Can Move Us Forward. She has interviewed countless successful people and saw that a setback was a core kind of function of so many of the stories that she was telling. And so then she dug deeper into it and learned more about it to have this whole book. Amy's also a journalist who writes for various print publications, and she's a marketing consultant who has worked with some of the world's largest brands. Simply put, Amy knows a thing or two about launching into your next. This conversation was a balm for me, quite honestly. Not only did it teach me that, you know what, the way I responded to my setback was actually extraordinarily productive. So I felt good about that. It had me kind of looking at my setbacks differently, not in a solemn way, but in a way that made me really proud of myself, of how I've been able to not push through, but overcome. This episode is about how to overcome. Setbacks will come, and it's not your fault. It's just part of life, right? But you can overcome. You can emerge from a setback better than how you started if you allow it to light a fire or spark something within you. Amy is here to show us how. I hope that's what you take out of this, is really that you are prepared. And, the whole idea that the best is truly yet to come. We're going to show you how. Amy's going to show us how. So let's go ahead and get into that conversation. Well, Amy, it's so lovely to meet you. You and this book, you embody everything that this podcast stands for. So I'm thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So before we go ahead and dive into the book, I really want to talk about setbacks more personally with you, about the moment that you had returning from maternity leave. And it helped birth what we call around here your next, kind of birth it in little ways, right? Explain to us what happened.
Well, I, like many people, left the workforce temporarily for caregiving reasons. A lot of people leave the workforce, care for a new child, care for an elderly relative, to care for themselves. And one of the big fears that they have is that the job will change, or the job won't be there when they return, or that they'll be penalized for prioritizing that care. My experience validated all of those concerns, because when I came back from maternity leave, and my leave was very short, it was only 12 weeks. It was not, I think, industry standard policy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the firm has since changed that policy, but it was very short. And yet, when I returned, I was told that I, would no longer have a leadership role on the accounts that I had taken so much pride in growing and building, like bringing in. And it was like such a shock. I had taken so much pride in this work, and I was told I wasn't going to be doing this work anymore, and that there was no replacement. It's not like, oh, you're not going to work on this because we have this other thing here that we need you to work on. It was just like, yeah, you'll figure out what else to do. And everyone around me said, wow, what a gift. You're a new mom and you have a lighter workload. That's so cool. But it didn't feel cool. It felt like assumptions were being made, or decisions were being made based on assumptions, not based on any conversation anyone was having with me. And so I always say, like, what happens when you sideline an ambitious woman or a mother? She turns her ambition elsewhere. And so I had always done freelance writing on the side. And so I just turned my energy there, and more writing led to more visibility and more high profile people seeking me out to tell their stories. Soon I was interviewing, senators and celebrities, and being asked to speak on really big stages about the themes I was seeing in my writing, and, what's happening in the world of entrepreneurship and women's leadership. And I was being called a leadership expert, and I was, winning industry awards. And I, like, all of a sudden, and then people are starting to ask me if I'll do marketing consulting for them, and help them shape their narrative and become a thought leader in their industry. And so I kind of worked my way out of a setback because I was sidelined in one area where I used to thrive. So I turned my attention and energy to this other area. And I'm really glad I did.
And I love that. I love that so much, because I think that, I don't know, so many people that I know are trying to like change their environments, like make them different. And it's like, no, the environment is what the environment is. You just like that transference of, no, I have the skills and I can do it here, or I can do it over here, straddle both, and I
Mm-hmm.
love that you kind of took part of like, all right, I'm going to continue working here, but I'm also going
Yeah.
to take my gifts and I'm going to create my own thing on the side, which ended up being so much bigger.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think if someone thinks they really can have an impact in their environment, they should try. I certainly tried. At some point became more vocal about my experience and talked to the people involved. Perhaps it was too late for me to benefit from any of it. I wish I had been more vocal when it was happening, but I wasn't. I was like too confused to be vocal about it. But
Mhm.
I do think that I did change that environment for people who
Mm.
came after me, for people who will be mothers and work on that team in that department. Because also, I'm talking about this publicly, people there aren't very happy with me. And
Right, right.
that said, they will never do this again.
Right.
I
No,
don't
that's true.
think. I mean,
That is
I
true.
have to assume that because I have brought this issue to light, which I did internally when I still worked there. I said, hey, this
Mhm.
happened. This wasn't cool. I felt horrible when this was done to me. And now I'm here publicly talking about it, and they're listening. So I don't think this will happen in the way it happened to me. So
Yeah.
change is possible. but you have to kind of piss off some people to make that change.
That's so true. That's so true. And talking about a setback, define what a setback is. I know you're talking about all the people you were interviewing, wildly successful, um, and noticing that that was a common theme with them. So, how do you define a setback now after doing all of your research?
A setback is defined, and going to give you the dictionary definition.
Okay. Okay.
A setback is defined as a reversal or check in progress. So it's when you are on a path moving forward, working towards a goal, and you're unexpectedly bumped backwards. This is the moment that, while it doesn't feel good because everything you've worked towards is like sort of either taken away from you or disappears, or, whatever it is, whether it's your fault, whether it's someone else's fault, whether it's a societal issue that's way beyond anyone's control, this thing you are working towards no longer exists, and you have to get creative and problem solve and use all kinds of logic and reasoning and creativity to figure out your path forward. And that is when people come up with their best ideas. And I have science and research that proves why this happens. But that was the theme I was seeing in all of the interviews I did. And I was also, working through my own professional setback while I was doing these interviews. So I was definitely, very attracted to these stories and trying to really kind of peel the lessons in any way I could so I could learn them myself and then share them with others, because it is such a universal experience.
We're just going to pause the conversation right there so I can ask you a really quick question. Have you subscribed yet? If you could just take a moment and subscribe. Bonus points if you rate and review this podcast. Not only will it ensure that you never miss another episode, it will help get this content in front of more people. That's always the goal. On YouTube specifically, we are so close to our subscriber goal. So again, thank you so much for doing this, helping your girl out. I really, really appreciate it. All right, let's get back into this conversation. And that's what I think that's so interesting, because I was like, that captures my experience. But I wouldn't have necessarily defined it as a setback. Like I
Right.
wouldn't have, used that term, but it's like, no, that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly why I wrote the book, because once I was I didn't come to the word setback until I was already on this journey. And I was like, what is the similarity? It's not post-traumatic growth, because I'm not always seeing these ideas born of like a trauma. It doesn't have to be such a big dramatic thing, but it's also not just as simple as like we learn from our mistakes. It's both of those things, but there's more to it. And then I came upon that definition of a setback, and I was like, oh, this is the thing that everyone is experiencing. And I looked for the book. I was like, where's the book about this? And I found like pieces of it in certain business psychology books, like Adam Grant, Carol Dweck, Susan David, like all these psychologists who have written books about how to succeed in business. And I didn't find it anywhere. The only books about setbacks that I really found were like sports analogies. And those are, that was relevant. But there wasn't like a book about careers and business and how to work through setbacks to find success.
And it's so funny you say that, because when I'm trying to like figure stuff out, I'll start watching like sports documentaries. Like I'll start watching, because it's just like, where do I go? Because of that thing, because
Yeah.
like, where do I go to find, and I'm searching for ants, and I just don't, to your point, it just didn't exist. I was just like, maybe I just don't know what it is. How do you think that people who are wildly successful are handling setbacks differently?
I mean, it depends on why they're wildly successful and what that definition of success is. A lot of people are just handed success. So I don't think those people are probably handling setbacks very well, because if you've been handed everything your whole life, you're not really a particularly resilient person. So yeah, a trust fund kid who was given, $200,000 to go start a coffee business, maybe it's profitable and maybe it's making a lot of money, and maybe that guy has I'm picturing a guy, I don't know why, but maybe that guy has like really good numbers, like a lot of money in his bank account. So if that's your definition of success, I don't know that successful person is very good at handling setbacks. But if you look at the founder who maybe came from a marginalized community and defied certain odds to create a business, to go open a restaurant, thriving in these fields where so many fail, that person has definitely developed a level of resilience and creativity and problem solving that will absolutely empower them to get through their next setback because they have the tools. They know that they've done it before. And one of the biggest things that a neurologist told me, who I interviewed for the book, one of the biggest things that predicts that people will work through setbacks successfully is if they've gone through it before and can they recognize the signs? Because if you recognize the signs, you course correct more easily versus someone who maybe hasn't been through many setbacks and you're just going to continue barging forward because you think you can like make this thing work. Maybe if you go back to like your example of people are trying to make certain environments change or work for them and it's just like not going to happen. I think we see that a lot, but I also think that that can be a result of someone who just like doesn't know how to recognize the signs of a setback.
No, that's so good. And I heard you say once that the more marginalized you are, the higher resilience you have. And so I thought that was really interesting. Really interesting. And let's dive into the defining the 4 phases of the setbacks, all E's. And the first one we kind of touched on a little bit was just establishing, right? Like establishing that you are actually, in fact, in a setback, which is not always obvious.
Nope. That's why, again, the establish phase, which is phase 1 of the setback cycle, that came later once I realized so many people just sort of unconsciously drift into setbacks. They're not all, yes, there's the obvious version of setbacks. A relationship ends, you're fired from a job, a business investor pulls out, a partnership fails. Those are obvious. But then in the less obvious ones, how many people do you know who stayed in a relationship too long or stayed in a job too long or continued on a path because it wasn't, even though it wasn't serving them anymore? Like those are setbacks that you need to establish before you can start to work through the cycle. So the 4 phases of the cycle are establish, embrace, explore, and emerge. Establish, we've talked about. Once you establish that you're in a setback, you have to embrace what's happening. Remember what the neurologist said, how you can course correct more easily if you recognize the signs. But this is a phase where you have to get a little uncomfortable. You have to like kind of sit in your setback and say, okay, like what just happened? Why is it impacting me this way? What did I learn? What was my fault? What was my role in this? What was someone else's role in this? And how can I move forward and use this information? I know it requires we get uncomfortable, but the discomfort is where the transformation happens. And so we kind of have to reframe our relationship with discomfort because that's where the information lives. That's how we don't just keep doing things the same way and continue barging forward in the same way we always have. It's how we, can finally stop dating the same type of person who where that relationship always ends up in a mess. And you can be like, you have to stop certain patterns and that's the same for career and business too.
And so talking about discomfort, I always say like, oh, that gut feeling, right? And you're saying lean into it, that it's giving you a lot of information. And I think that for me, sometimes you're trying to avoid it, but it actually is like there to be your signal, your kind of life signal.
As humans, we have been conditioned to avoid discomfort. I am the setback expert, and every time I feel that I am in a setback, I want to fast forward it and avoid the uncomfortable phase of embrace. So do not feel bad if you are also trying to just fast forward through the uncomfortable part, because I do the same thing, even though I clearly know better. Like it is just our instinct to do that. And it is so hard. It is so hard. I recently had like a friendship setback where you launch this book and you find all this success and everyone's so supportive. And there's like people who aren't supportive and you're like, wait, what? And it was a surprise. And I was so bummed out. But then I was also in the middle of this very exciting time and I didn't want that to ruin it. So I said, okay, I'm going to give myself one day. Okay. One day to obsess over this, to be upset about it, to mourn the loss of this relationship in the way that I had always treasured it. And then I'm going to move on. And of course, so I gave myself that day. It didn't feel good. I wanted to ignore it, but I gave myself that day and I think it helped me. Yes, of course, I still think about it, in the days following, I thought about it a lot, and then it started to sort of like dissipate. And I reflected and I was like, I actually stand by all my actions. Like, this is really more about this other person and what she wants to do and her decision, and carry on. And I think that it helped me move on from it a little quicker because I gave myself the day, but I also gave myself a deadline. And I was like, if
Okay.
you fall into rumination and you're obsessing over this
I'm a ruminator.
after today, like, just stop yourself, because you gave yourself the day. And so, like, that's not exactly a timeline that everyone could use for every setback,
Right.
but it's something that like creates these guardrails around allowing ourselves to experience it, but not allowing ourselves to move into rumination and obsession and like an unhealthy level of reflection.
Yeah. No, I get that. I'm a ruminator. I am. And I think of like, what could I have done differently? And I think also too, I'm just like, I put a lot of pressure on myself. Like,
Yeah,
you should
we
have
all
done
do.
this different, you should have done this, and this would have been a different outcome. It takes me a minute. It really does take me a minute. And talk about the role of community, because I love your perspective on community and how community factors into the setback cycle.
Of course. So we talked about phase one, establish, and phase
Mhm.
two, embrace. Once we have sort of like digested the information, we go into phase three, which is explore. And this is one of the best phases because you now start to play with what more might be possible. You get to explore your superpowers and figure out how to merge your passion with your strength. And one of the best ways to go about exploring your options is to rely on your community. And I think a lot of people have this sense that like they don't have a big community, but if you really start to map your connections, you'll see that your community and your connections are actually much more vast than you think.
Mhm.
And you can do this by making connecting a habit. So, like, every night when you go to sit down on your couch at the end of the day, send a text message or a DM to someone you otherwise might not have reached out to, especially when you're in this explore phase and you're trying to figure out your next steps, your next chapter where you're going to move forward. Look at people who have done something similar to what you're trying to do, or people who are in like adjacent industries. I mean, and let me tell you, like, since I have written this book, or I announced that I was writing this book, people have come out of the woodwork. People I went to college with and haven't spoken to in 20 years, people I went to elementary school with. And like, do you think it is awkward for them to reach out to me despite the fact that we've lost touch? Not at all. Not at
Mhm.
all. I'm like so
Mhm.
happy to hear from them. I'm so happy to help them if I can, with whatever they're going through. And like, reconnecting, you think it's going to be awkward, but it is always so much less awkward than you think it will be. And the rewards of just reaching out and making that, connection or reconnection, the rewards like are immeasurable. And
Mhm.
your community, especially when you're in the embrace phase or you're ruminating and you're just like totally getting caught up in your narrative that's born of like your self-doubt, it's your community that's going to pull you out of that self-doubt narrative,
Yeah.
and they're going to say like, nope, you are way more capable than that, you should be doing this, you could be doing this. I mean, only take the advice you think is serving you, but
Right,
like
right.
really really go to the people who see you for all that you're capable of, and maybe see farther beyond than what you can see for yourself.
I love that because that kind of naturally happened for me. I left
Yeah.
my news job in July of 2022, kind of just put something on Instagram because I needed some space. But then people just started coming out of the woodwork like, hey, let's hop on a call, let's go to dinner. And it's been my saving grace.
Yeah.
Like, it has absolutely, like I say on this podcast, like, angels are everywhere. Like, it
Yeah,
is.
they
And
are.
it's not just people that you've known for 20 years. It could be people that you met 2 weeks ago. Like, the amount of
Absolutely.
love, people want to help. People want
Yeah.
to, like, talk to you about it. And the more vulnerable you get to the right people, of course, but, within, measure. But people are like, yeah, no, I get that. Like, me, everybody's trying to figure this thing out. And so, kind of, a therapist once told me, let people love you. And I thought
Yeah.
that was the best. That was really the best. You talk about, though, within the network, you should have a challenge network and a hype network.
That's right. That's
So
right. So this
what's the
actually comes
difference?
from Adam Grant. He's the
Mhm.
one that coined the term your challenge network. I think I may have come up with the hype network. I don't think I got that from someone. I think I just like decided that that should accompany your challenge network. So you have to have people who challenge you, who say like, no, like that actually doesn't make sense, or like here's how this could be better. There, you have to surround yourself with people who will hype you. You need the hype, you need the support, you need the like yes people that are going to just like cheer you on, but you also need the people who are going to be real with you and going to be honest with you, because if you put an idea out into the world without enlisting your challenge network, you're, someone's going to criticize it. So like let your internal circle do it before they do. And so I think, and you could be your hype person and you can be your challenge person, but it's always good to get, outside opinions, because your perspective can only go so far. You obviously have,
Right.
certain areas that you can't see that you want others to check out and report back to you on.
For this explore phase, how do you know that you even have the agency to explore? Like when you need to do something that's like, I need to switch it up. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's not just 10 degrees. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need a 180, right?
Yep.
How do you even know? I had a conversation with a friend who is not happy about where they are right now, and they're considering not, they don't know what else is out there, right? And so they're like, let me just go back to what I know that I also don't like, but it's what I know because I don't really know what else exists in the world for me. How do you even know you have the agency to explore?
Well, I always say to people that you don't have to be going through a setback to continuously live in the explore phase. I frankly think that I built my lifeline before I needed it because I was always in the explore phase. I knew better than to put my entire identity into one company, one industry, because I was a journalism major and I graduated in the early 2000s when journalism was just like, journalism's still like a little bit of a mess, but it was totally shifting from like newspaper to digital, and
Mm.
the industry was shifting so much. And I don't know. I just felt like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go into this. So I went into marketing, but then I always did writing on the side. And I was always kind of like, even marketing was like changing so much. And I pivoted from public relations to social media marketing at some point in my career. And then,
Mhm.
I went into branding, and now I do like narrative strategy and marketing consulting. And so I've just never, all of these things though, like I could tell you what I'm good at without giving you like a list of jobs I've had. So if this person is like, well, I'm good at client relations, so I'm going to go work at a place where I run client businesses, or, oh, I'm really good at Excel and spreadsheets and numbers, so I'm going to go like be an accountant again, or be a finance person at a company again. That's great, but your skills go far beyond that. You know, why are you good at spreadsheets? You're organized, you're efficient, you're detail oriented. Where can you, those are called transferable skills. Where else can
Mhm.
you take that if you want to get out of finance? If you're good at client relations, what does that mean? Do you sit with people and really truly listen to them? Like, is that your skill? And then can you like repeat it back so that these clients are feeling heard and understood? Because you could take that a lot of places. You know what I mean? So I would
Mhm.
say if you're struggling to go to the explore phase, first of all, there's a lot of exercises in the book. Like there's a lot of guiding questions that you can go through to ask yourself. Number one, how can I build my community? Number two, how can I identify my superpowers? I think your friend should probably do the superpower exercise. That's a
Mhm.
really good one, because it makes you go beyond just like, what jobs have I had and what have I been told in a performance review? It makes you go deeper.
Mhm. And a lot of it is just being like, I was in local news and it's a bubble, and they tell you like you're exposed. So for me, I was exposed to a lot of things that a lot of people were not exposed to, but then
Yeah.
you're kind of told in the industry like, this is how you do it, like this is it, and if you're outside of it, it's not quite as good. But like there's a nose up in the air about the whole thing,
I
and
know.
you think that you have all this exposure. And it wasn't until I left where a friend of mine said to me, Andrea, like, after investigative reporter, like, what else can you do? Okay, anchor. After anchor, what else can you do? She's like, I'm working now, who's a former reporter. She's like, I'm now working on things that literally, like, for a global company, it affects how people do things every day in their lives. Like, you can still have impact outside of this thing. And it took her
Yeah.
just being very blunt with me, but I didn't know what I didn't know. Like,
You don't know what you don't
yeah, I
know.
didn't
Yeah.
have the exposure. And so now I'm talking to people right now and I'm like trying to be like, no, look out here, there's this stuff. But it's hard when you don't have proximity to it.
Yeah.
You're not, I mean, even living in New York City, you see all these big buildings, but I wasn't going inside them to like know what they were doing. I might go for an
Right.
interview, but I didn't know, like,
Right.
I don't really know how it works. And so when you're insulated, you're in an industry that's so insulated and insular while being high profile. How do you kind of go out to understand that the world is bigger, to even know that, yes, I have blind spots? What's worked for you?
Well, you have to map your. I interviewed a woman named Susan McPherson. She's the author of The Lost Art of Connecting, and she sees communities as constellations. And she says, like, all it takes is one link to another star to really unlock all the possibilities available to you. So I think if you're in this like very insulated bubble, or you've only been in one industry and all your contacts are in one industry, just go change that. Like, go send a DM, send a text message to someone who is in a different industry, get coffee with them, offer to buy them coffee, offer something that you can give other than your company if that's available, but like you said, people are more than willing to help out if you just
Mhm.
ask. And I think the scary thing for most people is putting the statement out there that they want to make a change, that they might be interested in exploring other industries and
Mhm.
leaving that bubble. And you don't have to make that decision by just having a coffee. You can just like reach out to people and just say, like, I think what you do is so interesting. I would love to learn more about it. You can put yourself out there if you're comfortable, but if you're not, there's no need. You can just connect with people and tell them that you think they're cool and you want to connect with them. That's fine. People are flattered. Again, it's like, it sounds like it's going to be so awkward, but it just is not. It is not. And like I said, even if you're not in a setback, you might want to build those connections before you need them. I just posted a reel where I was talking about how I landed my TEDx talk.
Mhm.
And it was all through connections, like very happenstance, but like me just being open to connecting and like following through. So I was speaking at a conference. I was introduced by a former coworker to another speaker while we were there, just ran into each other. Oh, hey, I remember you. We worked together, 15 years ago. She introduces me to this woman she's standing with. Me and this woman exchange information. We, go back home after the conference. We scheduled a coffee date, like a virtual coffee date. We did this, we just chatted. We got to know each other. We hit it off. She invited me to come be a keynote speaker at her conference because she runs a conference. I go to that conference. I meet another woman who does PR and we connect. And then I schedule a virtual coffee date with her when I'm about to launch my book. And I say, look, I don't have any money for a publicist. Like, I'm not, but I want to chat, And if you're willing to spend time with me, maybe you can help me brainstorm whatever, and she was more than willing to chat, even though I was very upfront. I was like, I cannot hire you. And then 2 days later, she emailed me and said, I have a warm lead at the TEDx conference in Foggy Bottom. It's one of the biggest TEDx conferences in the country. Would you mind if I put your name in as a, potential speaker? And I was like, yeah, okay. But I thought it was such a long shot. I was like, there's no way, but sure, go ahead. A week later, TEDx Foggy Bottom invited me to come speak. And that warm lead that she had was her intern. Her intern was a student at
No
GW.
way.
Her intern was a student at GW, still is a student there.
Mhm.
Found out that they were doing this conference on campus. Went to her boss, said, like, they're doing this TEDx conference on campus. Just wanted to let you know if you have any clients who might be a fit for the theme. I don't know if she submitted any of her clients to it, but she said, oh, I just talked to Amy Shoenthal. She's writing a book, The Setback Cycle. That's perfect for this theme. Submitted me. And it's like, you just like, I didn't have do a TEDx talk on my like 2024 bingo card. Like, I was launching a book this year. I was like, that's big. That's huge. That's good. Like, I'm good. But then TEDx talk, like, what? You have no idea the possibilities that are available to you until you start making those connections. Like, go to the conference, schedule the virtual coffee dates, and be nice to the interns.
I love that. I love that story. It's a perfect segue for our
Right?
last. Yeah, I love it. Especially the intern. That's why you
Right?
never overlook the interns.
You never know. Like, I
You
got a freaking
never
TEDx talk because of Avery the intern, who
know.
I've never met her, but I will forever be grateful for Avery.
Avery the intern. Oh my gosh. Perfect segue for our last segment is called ACT UP, ACT. Those are my initials. So somebody is in a setback. They want to be able to make it to the emerge, the last phase. They want to get to that last phase, emerge phase. What steps do they need to take today to kind of build that momentum to get them on the other side?
I think really you have to just be perpetually exploring your options. You have to be really tapping into your deep rooted curiosity. Like, what have you always wanted to do? What have you said, one day I will do this? Because one day is today. Go do it. Go figure out how to do it because you will be so amazed by how capable you are once you try. You will, yes, you will fall, you will fail, you will make mistakes when you learn something new. You are not going to be good at it right away. But let me tell you from my own experience and from the research I've done and the people I have interviewed, you have no idea the possibilities available to you. But I promise you, it will be like you will just be amazed by how much you can achieve if you just step a little bit outside of your comfort zone. You cast aside your narrative that's born of your self-doubt, and you just like open yourself up and you connect with your community and you just like start to explore. Explore is what paves the way to emerge. So never stop exploring.
I love that. And that's, I was well, the community knows, but I was just in a tough time in my job. It was very, very tough. And so now I just wake up with so much gratitude because of that explore phase, because I
Same.
just always just, man, like, gosh, there's so much out here. Like, I can conquer all these things, and I don't even have to know how to connect the dots. I just have to show up, and because amazing things have come. So I'm glad that it's backed by research.
Yeah,
it's,
it's true.
it's not
It's
airy
true.
fairy. It is
It's not.
true.
I have neuroscience that proves why this happens. So please read the book and you will be,
Yes.
I mean, you will be so amazed by
Yes.
what you yourself are capable of. That is why I wrote the book. That is thankfully what people are taking away from it. And
Yes.
again, you don't have to abandon what you've built completely to continue your ongoing exploration that will lead you to your eventual emerge phase.
Yes, and everybody's got to get your book. I bought my copy.
Ah,
Uh,
me too.
Setback Cycle. I hopefully I can see you at Luminary and bring it so I can get it autographed.
Yes. Oh, this
Yes,
book is all over Luminary. It is
yeah,
just all over Luminary. So if you are a Luminary member, you will definitely see the Setback Cycle, and you can browse through a copy.
yeah. And how else can we support you?
I have a newsletter, Amy's Antidote, so you can subscribe, and I just share. It's just like my fun. Like, here's an interesting topic, let's explore it. But I always try to keep it like optimistic and a nice antidote to your doom scrolling. And yeah, I mean, come connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Amy Show. Buy the book, leave a review on Amazon. I need to kind of get up to, I think, like 50 or 100 reviews, and I think I'm at like 40 something. And yeah, leave reviews on Amazon, Goodreads, all the things. Recommend me to your book clubs, recommend me to your women's ERGs. I'm doing a lot of corporate speaking. I'm doing workshops, professional development courses. So there's lots of ways to support me. So tell me how I can support you.
Oh, this is great. Amy, I just like it's through Luminary. I don't even remember how. I don't know if Kate, who's also been on this podcast, posted something about you and then I've been following you for a
Awesome.
while, but I've just learned so much from a distance. So I'm so glad we can chat. Thank you for just being out loud with everything,
Thank you.
just being such a great example to me, because, you know, they say you can't be what you can't see, and seeing you has really allowed me to know what is possible for me too. So I appreciate you so much for coming on and helping this community, because this is what the podcast is all about, is people who are in a setback, who are like, what the hell do I do now? Now you know, right?
Now you know, now you have the tools. So we will get you through your setback. And that, like, by the way, that is just those words. That was like the best compliment I could have ever received. So thank you for that.
Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing with Aundrea Cline-Thomas, a Mountain Court Media production. The music was written, recorded, and produced by Gavin Casey, also known as Dark Purple. Now, if you like what you heard, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and write a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share it with friends. Now, I hope this episode helps you on your journey. See you next time.